first of all, we have to, I think, can we reach an agreement that Donald Trump is oftentimes inarticulate?
Sure.
And that when he speaks, sometimes his words become sort of a mumbo jumbo of ideas and concepts. So let's throw that there. So what I'm asking you to do right now, working with me, is throw away that entire statement for a second and let's just talk reality. There's a budget right now that the House of Representatives, because last time I checked, the way the system works, I think the House has to pass a budget authorizing money to be expended to buy weapons. You know how much money is in that budget for Ukrainian weapons?
How much?
Zero. So you know how many weapons Ukrainians are going to get in the next 6 months from the United States? Zero, nothing. There's nothing in the pipelines. They're squeezing out what was already authorized. Much of that has had a hold put on it. What Donald Trump is saying in his word salad is that we've got $350 billion. You know, I don't know the economics of the rare earth minerals, but that's a number he likes to throw out there. Some people dispute that number, but he says that's our security. And the other thing he's saying is that money, that 350, can open the door for Ukraine to buy weapons. They're going to pay for the weapons. Again, let's just go back to basics here. What's Donald Trump's fundamental thing here? We're done paying for the security of Ukraine. Are we in agreement on that? Are we? I mean, I think you should agree with me because that's where he's at. We, the United States of America, are done paying for Ukraine's weapons. We're finished. It's done. It's over. If Ukraine wants our weapons, and we have beautiful weapons, we have the best weapons in the world, and we can offer those weapons to them so that you have to pay for it. And the way you pay for it is through this deal. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about long-term security agreements. He's not talking about continuing to fund the Ukrainian army so they can continue to resist Russia, because we're not funding the Ukrainian army. We're done with funding. We dropped out of Ramstein. I just want to remind people of that. The primary vehicle for providing weapon support to Ukraine was the Ramstein contact group that we used to lead. Pete Hegseth went over there and turned it over to the British, and he said, "You're in charge. Europe is in charge. We're done. We're finished. We're not going to be arming Ukraine again." That's the reality. That's the facts on the ground. So let's stop making stuff up. Because you can take the word jumbo salad, but then you have to attach it to reality. There are no weapons going into Ukraine right now. There's no money for weapons. Congress hasn't allocated funding for weapons. So therefore, it's over. And that's, Trump is saying that, we're not going to leave Ukraine naked in any peace agreement. He's saying, and again, whatever Trump is saying today about the peace isn't going to happen. He has negotiators. The guy I trust more than anybody else is Steve Wickoff, because he's the guy that made this all happen. He's the guy that made it all about the economy. He's the guy in constant contact with Kirill Dmitriev, talking about the economic aspects of this. And he is positive. He is optimistic. He's the guy that I'm listening to when it comes to the details of this thing. There is no peace negotiation taking place right now. Everything Donald Trump is saying is just mumbo jumbo. There's no peace negotiation. The Russians have said the United States hasn't put anything on the table, and there have been no follow-on meetings. The meeting they had, I think today, in 6.5 hours in Istanbul, between the State Department and the Russian Foreign Ministry, was about the restoration of diplomatic relations, which is a prerequisite for any peace talks, because you have to have the connectivity between the Russians and Americans diplomatically before you can get into the complex business of having peace talks. So they're going to do this first. Meanwhile, today, the Russians slaughtered thousands of Ukrainians, captured more villages, dominant position, establishing fire control of the last remaining line of communication in the Kursk, and on and on and on and on and on. And the Ukrainians are in a panic. Zelensky, before he came over here, fired all of his generals, because they're not getting the job done. And they're again, I think people, here's where I think there's so many people out there that hate Donald Trump, despise Donald Trump, that they just want him to fail. And, I'm not going to use bad language on your show, Danny, because I respect you and I respect your audience, but you all can go to hell, to be honest. This isn't about loving Trump, but you're hypocrites in the extreme. You say you want peace. Oh, we believe in peace. We want peace. We want the war to end. There's one guy that's making that happen right now. His name's Donald Trump, but you hate him so much that you're desperately trying to pull things out of thin air to make it look as though he's a failure, that he's a liar, that he's a hypocrite, that he's doing the exact opposite. The facts just don't align up for the people that are, voting against Trump. The man is on a singular path towards peace. Let me give it again. I just want to get the basics here because people, you have to stop making stuff up. Donald Trump has instructed Pete Hegseth, that's the Secretary of Defense, in case you all didn't know, to immediately begin reducing the size of the Defense Department budget by 8% for the next 5 years. That's a 40% reduction when this is all said and done. That's the strategic direction that this warmongering hypocrite that you all are talking about is taking us. And part of the instructions that are being given to the Pentagon on where to reduce the funding is to reduce European Command. That's the U.S. Military Combatant Command that supports NATO. Now, if Donald Trump was secret, because I've read this too, he's secretly trying to come in and build up NATO and betray Russia and stab Russia in the back, and their hands are moving imaginary arrows on the map. None of that's happening. He's talking about withdrawing the United States. Oh, what was the other thing that happened? That's right. We defunded NATO. Whoa, what about that, guys? All the secret war plans that's pretty damn clever of Donald Trump. A secret war plan against Russia based upon lies and hypocrisy, but he's defunding NATO as we speak. And, is he helping the European Union? Nope, he's going to put tariffs on them as well. Guys, get on board. Stop hating Donald Trump and start supporting peace, because that's the direction he's taking us, the direction you all claim you want to be going on. This is a man who is talking about, preventing World War III. I remember, Danny, when we were talking in September, October, November, how worried we were about nuclear war and how worried your audience was about nuclear war. Oh my God, nuclear war. It has to be stopped. Joe Biden's a threat. Well, the man that stopped it, his name is Donald Trump. He stopped it. We're not at that same level right now. He is saying, I don't want a nuclear war. And he is talking about nuclear disarmament. How can you have nuclear disarmament talks with Russia? The kind that he's talking about, sweeping, when you're seeking to betray them with imaginary arrows and maps and designs and all this stuff. Stop it. There's diplomacy taking place right now. With the French, guys, Macron flew in, had an imaginary meeting with Donald Trump, and flew home with nothing. Nothing. Starmer flew in, had an imaginary meeting with Donald Trump, and flew home with nothing. Zelensky's here. He's going to have an imaginary meeting with Donald Trump and then go home with nothing. That's the genius of Donald Trump. He just took the three biggest diplomatic problems we have when it comes to resolving this. There was a fourth one. That was the foreign minister of the European Union who came in to meet with Marco Rubio. Rubio said, no, we ain't meeting. I'm sorry, I don't have time for you. Whoa, what does that mean? It means Trump is playing, the politics of diplomacy right now. Receiving people, holding their hands, laughing, making them feel good, sending them home with nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Scott Ritter presents a perspective that frames Donald Trump as the only leader actively working to end the Ukraine war, arguing that his approach is fundamentally different from the current U.S. administration. Ritter emphasizes that Trump's key position is to stop funding Ukraine's military and shift the financial burden onto Europe. He points to the U.S. withdrawal from the Ramstein Contact Group as proof that Washington is stepping back from leading military aid efforts. Ritter also dismisses claims that Trump is secretly planning to escalate the conflict, arguing that his policies, such as reducing the Pentagon's budget by 40% over 5 years and defunding NATO, contradict any narrative that he is preparing for war. Instead, Ritter asserts that Trump's strategic goal is to disengage from European security commitments, including NATO, while focusing on economic negotiations rather than direct military involvement. However, Ritter acknowledges that there are no formal peace negotiations between the U.S. and Russia at this moment. While Trump speaks about peace, Ritter suggests that the diplomatic groundwork for serious negotiations has not yet been laid. He also highlights the ongoing deterioration of Ukraine's battlefield situation, arguing that Zelensky's recent moves, including dismissing military leadership, signal desperation rather than a viable strategy. Ultimately, Ritter's argument is not just about Ukraine, but about the broader geopolitical realignment Trump envisions. He portrays Trump as a leader who is using diplomacy to outmaneuver European allies and adversaries alike. Yet, His framing overlooks critical counterarguments, such as the risks of abandoning Ukraine without security guarantees and the broader implications of weakening NATO. Whether Trump's strategy leads to genuine peace or increased instability remains an open question, but Ritter's analysis presents it as a calculated and deliberate shift in U.S. foreign policy.